nothing to do with a woman's access to abortion. This would have not affected women's access to abortion at all. Abortion is legal up until birth for any reason. This is just about how do we treat compassionately the child who is born alive, who survives the abortion.
This is not an uncommon occurrence. Just recently, a mother decided to abort her baby at 19 weeks. The same misoprostol regime was started, and this little baby was born alive again, moving, gasping for air, and having a palpable heart rate.
On Tuesday, the Australian Senate voted down a motion calling for babies born alive after botched abortions to be cared for instead of discarded and left to die alone, often in a cold surgical tray, sometimes even taking hours. Joining me now is Dr. Joanna Howe, who's been campaigning hard on this issue for a very long time. Thank you, Joanna, for joining us. What am I missing? Because I've read through it. It doesn't seem very controversial.
It's not. It's not, Avi. 99% of Australians would support the proposition that if a baby survives an abortion, they should be treated as a person under the law and be entitled to medical care. And yet, in the Senate yesterday, 32 senators voted against that proposition. So it's actually unfathomable, but for the fact that we know parliaments do not represent the Australian people on this issue, and we've known that for a while. So Ipsos does a poll every year. Only 31% of Australians support abortion up to 20 weeks. In every state and territory, abortion is legal up until birth. So we know that our parliaments are much more extreme on this issue than the people, but the issue is the people just don't know what's going on. And even the debate yesterday, the mainstream media didn't report it. You won't find it in any major newspaper or television network. And yet I think it was the most important motion that we've had in a very long time, because it was about dealing with vulnerable Australian babies who are left to die after their abortion.
Now, we witnessed recently heart-wrenching testimony by a midwife in Queensland to the Senate. I imagine that's where this came about.
You've had babies born alive after terminations from 15 to 22 weeks, born alive, gasping for air, moving and having a palpable heart rate, fighting for their lives as we are humans designed to do. These babies were alive from anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes to 3 to 5 hours. Parents of these babies who are born alive after abortion do not want to see or hold them. This means the only person left who could possibly hold them is a midwife or a nurse. If this were a pregnancy loss of a wanted baby, the mother and father would usually comfort that baby while the baby was alive until they pass. In a termination of pregnancy where the baby is unwanted, babies are sometimes born into witches' hats or kidney dishes and taken out of the room immediately at the parents' wishes. If alive after abortion, the bereavement midwife or a regular midwife providing care for the woman holds the baby until the baby stops gasping, moving, or no longer has a palpable heart rate. Sometimes babies born alive after an abortion are put into witches' hats and are covered, taken out of the room, and die while in that witch's hat.
No matter where you kind of sit on the abortion debate, this issue, I think when you hear that testimony from somebody that has witnessed it, lived it, knows about it in real life, and you kind of hear what actually goes on in the real world, surely you'd say, all right, even if I support abortions, I can also at the same time support caring for babies that are born in botched abortion, in a botched process, and leaving them out to die is just inhumane, no matter where.
Yeah, it's torture. So Lou Adsett is a midwife. She's been a midwife for 14 years, has an exemplary performance record, never had any issues, and she had felt that it had just gone too far. So ever since Queensland legislated abortion up to birth in 2018, every year after that, the number of babies born alive and left to die after an abortion in Queensland has been in excess of 40. So it's almost one a week in Queensland alone. Lou Adsett has said there's increasing levels of social terminations, which we can see from the data, that babies up until birth are being aborted. They're perfectly healthy And when we call this a social termination, we mean it's not for a medical reason. There's nothing wrong with that child, and the mother doesn't have a physical health issue. And so these babies that are born alive and left to die, there's actually nothing wrong with a lot of them. And you could give them life-saving treatment and they could potentially live. But those that aren't going to live, this motion yesterday that the Senate voted against was actually just about palliative care, that we would treat them with the dignity that they deserve.
To give you a first example, a mother made a decision to abort her baby at 21 plus weeks gestation. The process began in the morning with misoprostol given throughout the day. The process took all day, and the baby was only delivered during the early hours of a night shift, where skeleton staff was on duty. This baby moved vigorously, gasped for breath, and had a palpable heart rate. To make it clear, this baby was alive. It was over 400 grams, so the baby was a good weight. The parents of this baby did not desire to see or hold this baby. Midwives and doctors were left holding this little life while they continued to provide cares for other women who were birthing and welcoming their babies into the world. This baby boy fought for his life for 5 hours before taking his final breath. This is not an uncommon occurrence. Just recently, a mother decided to abort her baby at 19 weeks. The same misoprostol regime was started, and this little baby was born alive again, moving, gasping for air, and having a palpable heart rate, and once again, over 400 grams. This was a busy shift, and the midwife who took over care from the bereavement midwife when this baby was delivered was distressed and shocked that the baby was alive at 19 weeks and could not hold it. The baby was taken to the pan room, and as the mother declined to hold that baby, even knowing it was alive. The midwife who was providing care for this baby and mother who was terminated was also providing care for another lady who had decided to terminate her baby at a later gestation and had a feticide. As this was a busy shift and we were short-staffed, it was suggested that this little baby be put into the dirty pan room and covered and be left on its own to take its final breaths alone. As the baby kept on breathing for longer than anticipated, thankfully another midwife was able to hold the baby while doing work until the baby took its final breaths. This baby was alive for almost 3 hours.
You know, this is absolutely shocking, but it's very hard to get the media's attention because they have a narrative that is pro-abortion, and this doesn't work with the narrative, you know. And
but what I'm confused about that is I can't see it. No matter where you sit on the abortion debate, this feels beyond that. This feels like, okay,
of course, yeah,
the baby's being
Abby.
born.
Yeah.
It's a botched abortion. You've got a living human in front of you who either can be saved or at least given medications to die comfortably. How is that part of the abortion debate? That is just, I guess that's just about a decent human being.
Well, the narrative of the abortion industry is that this is just a clump of cells, that abortion doesn't kill a baby. And so
a clump of cells is gasping
really
for air.
Yeah, it becomes really clear that this is a baby the minute you see a live birth after an abortion. If you're a little baby girl wriggling, gasping for air, crying, whimpering, and it's really clear that this is the really horrific reality of abortion up to birth. And yesterday, our politicians voted in an extremely heartless, cruel and barbaric way, because these babies are being tortured worse than Guantanamo Bay. They are left to die gasping for air without anyone to comfort them or ease their pain or distress. They're being treated worse than we would treat animals in this country. I don't understand how anybody could have voted against the motion yesterday. It just really shows you how effective the abortion industry is. There must be money going to these political parties, to the Greens and to Labor, who voted unanimously.
Who are the monsters? I'm just going to call them monsters. Who are the monsters that voted against this?
Okay. So 16 senators from Labor voted against it. Penny Wong would be one that people know the name of, but there were 15 others that joined her. They were majority women, actually. The Greens, Larissa Waters, Sarah Hanson-Young. I don't know if you can pull up the photo of what she was doing when Senator Babet was talking about the plight and suffering of these newborns. As he was talking about this, she literally walks past him, Sarah Hanson-Young, and sticks her tongue out of the mouth and makes a vomiting motion. That is a monstrous thing to do. But actually, everybody who voted against this motion is monstrous for what they did. You know, there were 4 Liberal senators. So Jane Hume, Andrew Bragg, Simon Birmingham, and Maria Kovacic. They are a sickness in the Liberal Party. They should not be in the Liberal Party. I also question whether Labor even has a conscience vote on abortion anymore, given that they unanimously voted for it. And the senators from Labor who would have a problem with this and who would have wanted to vote for the motion, they just didn't turn up. These are politicians who I don't think would have voted against this motion, but they just got the memo to not turn up. And you just wonder what is the bullying and harassment behind the scenes in Labor to prevent people from exercising their conscience to vote for a motion that was about equal protection for Australian newborns.
From what you're explaining here, it seems like anybody that self-identifies as compassionate, from the far left to the left of Labor, which is left, and then the left of the Liberal Party, all those that would deem themselves as compassionate are the ones that have voted against this. Again, I want to make it clear, this was not a motion about abortion in itself. This was a motion about a botched abortion, how to care for, even if they want to call it a fetus, a living being trying to gasp for air.
Yep. The abortion has happened, Abby. Nothing to do with a woman's access to abortion. This would have not affected women's access to abortion at all. Abortion is legal up until birth for any reason. This is just about how do we treat compassionately the child who is born alive, who survives the abortion. And we know from the data that this is 1 a week. So between 2010 and 2020, there were 724 babies born alive after an abortion in just Queensland and Victoria. So that's just 2 states. They produce annual health report data. The other states don't. So we know that it's actually probably more than 1 a week, because this happens in other states and territories as well. And, you know, so this is not an insignificant issue. Larissa Waters from the Greens got up yesterday and she said, oh, this is just so rare as to be inconsequential. But it's not. It's not rare at all. Even if it was 1 baby a year who was tortured in this way, it would be too much.
What would you say to the average Aussie that, I guess, is apathetic about this situation, or thinks maybe you're just an extremist that is, just, chasing after the compassionate side of politics?
Yeah, look, I just think this is an issue we all have to care about. I'm a mum and I think about my kids and I think about holding them straight after birth, and the fact that even at a day old, I cut my daughter's fingernail, and they're really hard to cut, baby fingernails, because they're like really small, and she just screamed a little heart out, and that was at 1 day old. And I just think about these little babies who are born alive after an abortion. This is a reality. We can't say it doesn't happen. So it does happen. It happens in our country. And if we care about human rights, then we have to care about this issue. It's not an extreme position to take. You might not agree with me on the abortion issue, and that's fine. I respect that. But on this issue of babies born alive after an abortion, the only correct response is to say that we treat them as people. Because if we don't, then we're saying there's a whole category of people who exist in our country who do not have access to legal protection under the law. So I talk about this as a simple matter of birth equality. And Australia is not a fair country if we allow this to continue.
And what would you say to the senators that voted it down yesterday?
I am really glad we flushed you out.
If you think it's important for the world to know what's happening to these babies here in Australia, make sure to share this story far and wide, because as you just heard, the mainstream media is doing everything they can to kill this story just as heartlessly as they kill those poor babies. And then please head over to buildourstudio.com to help us cover the final costs that make these interviews possible in this new state-of-the-art studio. Buildourstudio.com. We're almost there, but thanks to your help, I'm sure we'll raise the final funds needed. Buildourstudio.com.